Limbus Company has some of the best written characters I've seen out of any game. That's right, these 12 fools of varying stature and stupidity are among the best written characters I've seen from a video game. And on hearing that, you may ask, why do you care so much about these chibis that were made in Microsoft Paint? Is it their development, their archetypes, and how those interact with each other, or is it that they have really interesting flaws in their character? And whilst all that is a big part as to why I love the cast, my thoughts can be simplified into just one statement: they aren't idiots. Which, to anyone who's played the game, that may sound like the stupidest shit you've ever heard on account of the fact that top to bottom, left to right, this is by far the dumbest cast of characters I have ever witnessed. Truly, it cannot be understated just how dysfunctional these 12 are. Yet at the same time, I find it hard to put into words the severity of the brain damage you see coming out from them on the daily. It's weird. Right here you have the stupidest cast I've seen whilst being some of the best written characters in a video game. Why is that the case? How can Limbus Company as a story have moments where you horrifically fail to infiltrate a casino, causing a stealth mission to turn into a Gears of War segment, with a part that has a white boy busting it down sexual style, or have a vengeful organization hunt you down in the sea, killing you for 2 hours straight over some stolen hair coupons, or have the protagonists completely obliterate each other 10 minutes after introducing themselves? How can it have shit that feels ripped from a drunk D&D session, yet also have stories about improving yourself as a person, where we see people struggle with viewing their entire life as a failure due to the person they could have been, seeing someone have their life consumed with nothing but blind obsession, or witness a story of a character who has had everything crumble before them and see the strength it takes to rise from that. Basically, how can we go from this
본인은 비치 볼리볼?
to this?
왜 계속 저를 막아요? 왜 계속 시계를 돌려주는 거예요? 그래서 당신이 몰았는다고? 그렇게 좋게 넘어가려는 듯이 착한 척하면 속이 편해요.
And somehow have the narrative be more than slightly cohesive while actually working really well. Short answer is, Limbus Company is goated. Long answer is the rest of this video. So to take you on the tale of these 12 dysfunctional adults accompanied by their sentient clock, let's talk about the beginning of the game. I ain't gonna talk terribly much on world building, as even though this video is for people getting into the game as well as current players, I'm mainly just gonna focus on the writing for the characters. I'll only explain world building when it's inherently necessary. So the game starts with Dante, the player character, removing their cranium from their body so they can put a clock prosthetic in its place. Don't question it too much. From there, the 12 sinners, basically your squad, get introduced and they all die horrifically in battle to only be revived after the player character goes to the Gate of Truth from fucking Full Metal Alchemist. Now, anyone who has yet to play the game is probably questioning a lot, but again, don't worry about it. After this, introductions are to be had. This is our first time getting to know the characters, so we can be sure to see all their quirks, characteristics, motivations, everything that will make us care about them for the rest of the game.
이상이라 하오.
Brother, what the fuck was that? He literally just took his nerdy face, tired eyes, damn Beatles bowl cut having ass, and just said his name. He's going to be with us throughout the entire journey, and this was all he had to say. Really? Well, what if I told you that despite the tragedy of his intro, which lasted roughly 20 frames in total, he is one of the most beloved characters in the entire game? I know that sounds maybe a smidge strange at first, but his introduction shows a part of why I really like Limbus's writing. Cause in a ton of games, when a character is introduced, it feels like we're out here just reading a damn job application. A character pulls up going like, I trained in sword fighting since I was an adult. I loved my family. The Demon Lord's army killed my town and family. I now wish to shove my sword up the Demon Lord's ass. And I'm just meant to care about this bitch? Like, this isn't a therapy session, brother. I just met you. Why do you think I give a shit about your family? And then the hero has some moment of, oh my god, this is such a tragedy. Human life is sacred. How could those demons do this? Like we didn't just call a fucking meteor to decimate some simple bandits 4 minutes before this cutscene. When you introduce a character, you need to keep in mind one simple question. Does the audience realistically give a shit about this person? And the answer is, 9 times out of 10, God no, we really don't. So I don't care to have an exposition dump about why I should give a damn about them. I'ma forget that shit like 10 minutes after, which is why I appreciate the story just introducing a character and going like, you know nothing about them right now. You couldn't care less about them. but give us time and we'll make you love them. That is a much more natural approach to a story rather than trying to list off reasons we should care about a random person we just met. And it takes confidence to be able to do that, especially because Limbus Company is a gacha game, so selling players on the characters is by far the most important thing for the longevity of a game in this genre. Like, these 12 are the only ones you'll be using in the entire game, so if you ain't sold on them, then players would just dip. And many games recognize this, especially gachas. So they try to shove any positive traits about a character down your throat the second you meet them. But Limbus is able to sell its audience on its world building and writing before anything. It's not desperately trying to make players love the characters. That'll come with time. And with saying that, you may think that even though in the early chapters we don't see much development happen for this cast of 12, then we'll surely see it happen in the later chapters. I mean, shit, the game's been out for a year with constant... Maybe constant's a bit of a hopeful term, but it's been out for a year with updates happening sometimes. So surely we should have already seen the development for these 12 fine specimens of brain rot. And the answer is, half of them are yet to be fully explored in any meaningful way. I'm not fucking with you. Half of these hoes' backstory, goals, wants are still unknown. I mean, we have a general idea of what their chapters will be like, because all of these sinners are based off of classic literature. Like Heathcliff is based off of Wuthering Heights, and in his canto we go to, you guessed it, Wuthering Heights. Ishmael is based off of Moby Dick, Meursault is based off The Stranger, which is some weird French book or something, and Sinclair is based off of the most homoerotic thing I have ever read, Damien. And because of this, we can take a guess at what the Sinners' canto will be like. Also, in case you don't know, a canto is basically a character's chapter. As in Limbus, a chapter, or canto, is a deep dive into a specific character. But even though they generally follow the themes of the original books, we don't know for sure what will happen in them or the twist that will be spun onto the narrative. Yet despite the fact that half of the cast ain't got their canto, the community still loves every character in the game. So why is that the case? Why do we care about these characters before any huge development for them has happened? And there's many answers, but the main one to me is the characters don't feel restricted. Which I know sounds weird, but here's an example. Ryoshu. She is downright insane, even more so than the others on the bus. Yes, by the way, their house is a bus, don't question it. But she decides to speak in abbreviations, and also wishes for nothing more than to splay the guts of your enemies and create magnificent art from their corpses. Like, okay, I never said she was a saint, right? And the thing with that is, we don't know why. The plot is yet to tell us, so we just need to take guesses. We'll probably know why in her canto, though as of now, zero clue. Same goes with Don Quixote. She's all about justice and has done some of the stupidest shit because of that. Hell, if we know why she has that fixation, she just does. That is to say, the characters don't feel like the plot demands of them. It doesn't feel like, oh, this is Ishmael's canto, so everyone else just shut the hell up and don't exist. Instead, in every canto, we see hints of who a character really is and small developments that happen from them, which is much more believable than having a mostly static character suddenly change when the writers think it's their turn on the development wheel. In Limbus, all, or at least most, of the development is generally planned out, as we've seen CGs that exist for some cantos months before they were released. Because of this, the characters feel thought out and are doing their own thing in the story, instead of the story ignoring a character until it is their own canto. Which is why these 12 already have interesting character despite half of them not being focused on in the story yet. This approach to the story makes little lines here and there double back with a ton of meaning later. Like one throwaway line is when Ishmael says that Dante is incompetent as a manager.
적어도 관리자님만큼은 책임감이 있을 줄 알았는데 겨우 돈키호테 꼬임에 넘어간 건가요? 실망이에요. 아무리 그래도 다른 누구도 아닌 관리자님인데 이번에야말로 전에 겪은 실패라는 치욕을 닦아내려 주실 수 있을 줄만 알았는데.
She said that after she saw her stealth mission in the casino become about as botched as Heathcliff's hairline. Now, first time hearing her chew us out, everyone just thought, yep, shit OG, you right, we kinda dumb, not gonna lie. But we didn't notice these small changes that happen afterwards. As before that line, Ishmael was more open with the group and interested in seeing Dante's ability in management. She wasn't precisely buddy-buddy, but bare minimum, she was being approachable. Then as time goes on, she sees how dumb we are and eventually tells Dante some shit you would hear out of Gordon Ramsay. After this scene, bit by bit, she starts talking less in the story. She takes a backseat to any conversations and doesn't really talk to anyone unless it's needed. and she mainly pipes up about how insufficient we are as a group. This boils over to the sea event where she snaps after hearing how we're going to be going up against the Palid Whale. By then she's shouting about everyone's inadequacies, and not wanting to take part in any fun activities because they need to train for what they're about to do. And many players were confused why she was going down this road so suddenly, as at the time we had no answers, so we just assumed that the Great Lake, which was the place they were going to, basically just imagine the Grand Line from One Piece, was just that scary. And she wanted us to be strong so we didn't get annihilated. But that's not why she grew distant from the group, and the signs of it existed ever since that casino scene. As she grew distant because she saw Dante's inadequacy to be a good leader and how the group was filled with lobotomites. The importance behind that was how she wanted a strong leader and group to help her kill the person she had a vendetta against, Ahab. And after she figured out how weak the group was during the casino heist, she knew that they wouldn't be able to really guide her and help her with her vendetta. Because of that, she started speaking less, as we wouldn't have really been useful in that goal of hers. But we never knew that was the reason why. The story never told us that until it was the right moment too. Months before this was revealed, we saw her get fed up with the group. Most just thought she was being a hard ass. Then we saw her speak less and just assumed that she was taking a backseat to the story. Maybe they couldn't write her in, who knows? But nah. It all existed to show the obsession she had with her goal, how that consumed every action in her life, which is the big overarching theme in her canto. And the story didn't care to explicitly tell us this because it was not yet time for that. We only found out why months later. That is what makes an interesting character. We see small signs of something bigger and the story doesn't feel the need to bash us over the head with it. Hell, most of us missed these signs or forgot about them entirely. I only picked up on this when I was playing through the earlier chapters. But that's an example of a believable character trait. The game didn't feel the need to throw up a flashing sign saying, "She thinks y'all are dumbasses, so she's speaking less in the group as y'all won't be able to achieve her goals." The story assumes that bare minimum the audience has unlocked the mythical human DLC known as fucking reading comprehension. Now unfortunately a lot of people lack that shit, ain't gonna lie, but I appreciate a story that treats the viewers like adults. An example of the opposite would be Genshin Impact, where if a character shows a tiny sign of something greater, Paimon feels the need to rupture our eardrum in explanation of that fact. They've been doing it less, but the story is filled with moments where something happens and instead of letting the player think about why a character is doing that in particular, we just hear Paimon rattling off about it. Deadass like Dora the Explorer levels of explanation to the player. Homie, just shut the hell up and let me think for once. I don't like when the writing feels the need to explicitly explain in detail everything. Goddamn, treat the player like we have some neurons left. It feels natural that way. And something else that makes the writing good is how the characters act, well, in character. To put it simply, a lot of stories feel like we need to hit X, Y, and Z as plot points. So to do that, we need these characters to do this, which then furthers the story so we can get to some big plot reveal later down the line. Limbus instead feels like, we have these characters and the story will be purely and solely about them. The world already has so much development about it, but the plot will not be focused on just exploring the world. The centerpiece is the characters, and as a byproduct, the world can be further explored. Because of this different mindset, the plot feels like characters existing in a world and dealing with their problems, as opposed to them going through the world due to the plot. An example of something that fails at this is Wuthering Waves, which, whilst I really love the game and have been farming it full time, the writing is about as complex as a 2D Rubik's Cube, but brother, it's kind of ass. And it really feels like a game that has characters just move you, the player, through the plot. Like, you wake up and these motherfuckers are already glazing you frame one. They treat you amazingly, have you go off with them to the city, protecting you the best they can along the way. We don't see anything remotely interesting come from them. We can see their character traits. I mean, at the beginning it shows Achisha is very animated. But you really mean to tell me someone pops up out of nowhere and all of a sudden everyone treats them like God and for whatever reason is willing to immediately send them into combat to save their friend? Like, motherfucker, I'm an amnesiac. Why are you sending me to fight a monster? It makes sense gameplay-wise as it sets up a tutorial for the player, but character-wise, why would she have faith in us being able to whip some ass after being unconscious for who knows how long, whilst we can't even remember our name? Lest we even talk about how after fighting this demon that looks ripped straight from Elden Ring, Achisha cares more about our health more than, I don't know, her damn friend for who knows how many years that was also fighting that roided out skeleton? Who acts like this? why are you more concerned with the person you met 5 minutes ago? Then after that, all they do is just spout out information about the world and bring you to whatever place you specifically need to go to. They don't feel like characters. They don't have any personal motivations or aspirations. They're just encyclopedias that also treat us like a god. That's not believable. People don't act like that. Limbus even has a character that also treats the protagonist like a god, but she does that at a very obvious ass-kissing because she used to work in the army, so she knows how the chain of command is and is just acting that way for brownie points. It makes sense for her to do that, but nobody else treats Dante like that. At the start, everyone treats him like a fool who doesn't know much, because guess what? They're an amnesiac in a city that has people murdering and cannibalizing each other 24/7. There's no reason to place any hopes or such on the protagonist. Aside from their revival ability, they're a liability. So by having characters that are distant, they feel much more believable than a cast that feels specifically engineered to treat the protagonist like a messiah. What actually feels believable is what happened in CBT-1, where after the rover just magically absorbed the strong-ass roided Skeletor, Chisha thought the rover was a threat and pointed a Glock at him. That makes more sense when you look at a world that is currently in a war against monsters and, out of nowhere, this random stranger just absorbs the strongest one y'all have ever seen. You should be concerned. Why are they able to do that? They should be considered a threat, not immediately asked, after absorbing something that was whooping our ass, if they can grill those monsters and eat them. Like, what the hell is that? That's why the characters in Wuthering Waves don't feel very natural. They exist to just further the plot, help the rover, and explain damn near everything to them. The plot demands that the player gets this done, so a character will be the one to help with that, instead of the plot feeling like the characters are naturally moving through it to progress the story. Meanwhile, let's look at how Kanto 3 handles its plot and characters. So, Virgilius brings up how we're going to the nest of K-Corp. From that, Sinclair shows a lot of worry, to the point of throwing up, and we don't know why. He isn't telling us anything. Then we try to get past the security checkpoint of K-Corp, and because Dawn saw injustice happening, she decided to intervene in what the security was doing at the checkpoint. From everything we saw for her character in the past, that action makes sense. From there, since we now pissed off the security of an incredibly strong nest, we proceed to have the sinners killed over and over because one of them was a dumbass and did something that is entirely in character. Now after that ass whooping, we move on, and Virgilius then gives Dawn an ass whooping only a disappointed parent could really dish out, cause she did some dumb shit. That dumb shit, in line with her character, it makes sense. That ass whooping, in line with his character, that makes sense. Then Sinclair shows even more worry when he realizes that we're going to his old town. Again, doesn't tell us why. Gets terrified when he hears Cromer speak, doesn't tell us why. He eventually says the basics of what N-Corp has done, but he doesn't dig deep into his past and why he's scared of them. He doesn't whip out a damn PowerPoint presentation onto why they're raging assholes. We only see why he feels that way when his memories are forcibly displayed, which shows that the reason behind him not saying anything is because of the guilt he has for his past, which was that when he was in school, he let Cromer into his world. Afterwards, she led a group to kill his family because they wore prosthetics, and N-Corp, of which she's a part of, hates anyone who wears them. Now, if he didn't show Cromer where he lived, then his family would have had a better chance of, not being murdered. So it makes sense that he never brought anything up about his past until it was forcibly said, as the guilt was holding him back. All of these actions are in line with the characters and their motives. Dawn is a dumbass, she will do dumb shit. Virgilius is a guide, he will guide. Sinclair is consumed by guilt. He's not gonna spout his past off to anyone with an ear just cause it relates to the plot. Then let's look back at Wuthering Waves. The scene is that you are about to fight essentially the commander of the enemy army that is currently leading a siege against the city you're now a part of. On your team, you have yourself, the person who's treated you like a god since frame 1, and the literal commander of the entire city's army who has been fighting this battle in the north for a long ass time. Now, ahead is the enemy commander. Behind is some fodder that is closing in on you. What currently makes sense for these characters to do? Have the commander with years of battle experience push on and fight the enemy commander, which when they die will take out all the enemy forces. Or maybe have everyone deal with the fodder and when an opening appears go off to fight the enemy boss. Or does it make more sense for the commander of the army, by far the person with the most experience, to then sit in the back and deal with the fodder as he sends off the person with amnesia and some mega simp to fight this fucking Dark Souls boss? You guessed correctly. He wants to leave the fighting of an incredibly strong foe to the two people he just met as he sits in the back and plays with the basic bitches. That makes no damn sense. At least with the rover, he is testing to see if they are the chosen one, but why are you sending off their mega simp in place of you to fight the enemy commander? If that is the level of confidence for the leader of your forces, it's no wonder y'all have been in a stalemate for a minute. He's a damn fool. Him saying he'll stay behind exists purely so Yang Yang could have this hero moment where she stays behind instead, protecting us, the person she met like 4 days ago. It's not character driven at all. He said that just so her hero moment could happen. Logically, it doesn't make sense. The writers wanted that scene and didn't care if the characters had to suddenly become idiots to make it happen. That is what I'm talking about when the writing feels like the plot has the characters doing shit to hit points as opposed to the characters being themselves and having shit happen from that. And I do hate to shit on Wuthering Waves as I really like the game, but by far the story is the weakest aspect of it. I'm playing it on the daily, but we need to keep it real. That is the one aspect we can't defend that much. So that's a preamp as to why I like the little things behind the character development and writing in Limbus Company, the stuff that makes the cast feel believable. Let's now talk about the front and center development for them. So as I said, every canto is about a specific character story. It fully dives into who they are. The only exception to this though are the first three cantos, Gregor, Roygia's, and Sinclair's. Those do a good job of introducing the character and what they're really about, but they don't go the extra mile for resolving their conflict, like Canto 4 to 6 does. Main reason is because those cantos introduce characters that will be much more important later on in the general story. So they feel like a bookmark that we'll return to later and then see more development on those fools. And also the fact that they were released chapters doesn't do much to help them lengthwise, as I'm pretty sure Canto 6 is larger than the first three put together. But to drive home why I really love the characters, I'm going to talk about Canto 4 and 5, as those are the prime examples of what Project Moon looks to write throughout all of their works. Now, since this video is meant for people interested in the game and for current players, when I go into spoilers, I will explicitly mark it out. Though when it comes to Limbus Company storytelling, there is a lot to unpack. There's the city that has all these different districts which have some insane technology in each of them, like the ability to regenerate your body instantly or teleport to other dimensions and even repackage and use time. With that district also taking away color from everything as well, because honestly, they're just kinda dicks. There's also the mafias known as the fingers, like index, middle, thumb, etc. But the thing is, most of this isn't imperative to the story. Yeah, don't get it twisted. The story takes you on gigantic turns and shows how insane the world is. Like, straight up, in Canto 5, you fight a whale the size of the average American. But the development of the characters is much more grounded in reality. It takes insane settings, shit you'd expect from a game that's mixed with fantasy and a technologically dystopian city, but then it brings you through a story that feels more akin to psychoanalysis. And you know what? Immediately after saying that, I feel like I'm venturing into the fucking Rick and Morty fandom mindset of, oh, you must have a strong intellectual mind to understand Limbus Company, and I wouldn't say that's the case. The story doesn't treat the player like a dumbass, but it isn't exactly rocket science either. So I don't mean psychoanalysis as you'll need a damn PhD to decipher this. I mean to say it talks about the problems a lot of people face on the daily, and then talks about how to overcome those problems or how to deal with them. For example, let's take Canto 4. It talks about Yi Song's past and how regret changed him and his companions. It starts by telling us why he decided to make technology in the first place, what drove him as an engineer, with him making it apparent that he doesn't really care about money or fame. I mean, fuck, in the cook-off event, he literally wants to eat a rotten potato. Nobody was forcing him, by the way, I want to make that clear. This was a conscious effort wanting to consume that whilst people were actively cooking food that, whilst being known throughout all definitions as unbearable ass, was at least not poisonous. So he doesn't give a shit about raking in the cash to drop by Gordon Ramsay's place. This motherfucker would be satisfied from the food he finds in a trash can. The only thing that matters to him is the League of Nine, which was a group made by his friends, and all they did was just make technology, and Yi Song was fine with that. He didn't even care about making some bread from his technology. Hell, he even offered to donate his money to the League when they were in a pinch. Then, as time passed in the group, Yi Song noticed little fights being formed between the members, due to a clash in ideologies. But because he had always lived his life in a very meek and slantwise way, he never held the confidence to help resolve these conflicts. He just let them be. Then later T-Corp, which is the name of the wing they were in, decided to ransack the League for the technology they made because it was unregistered. Due to this, the group split up, and a gap between the members was further wedged after it became apparent that one of them informed T-Corp about what the League was doing. After the split up, Yi-Song lost all purpose in his life. The only thing he loved was the League, and now it's broken apart, leaving him just regretting not being a better friend, regretting how he let the group members fight even after seeing the signs that some members were growing distant to one another. He fell into a depression, and during this time he looked into the mirror. Not an actual mirror, by the way, it's a piece of technology he refined called the mirror. Now the mirror technology has the ability for the user to see into parallel worlds. Now when he was looking through each parallel universe, he was searching to see the life of the Yi-Song in that world. And then he came across Song Yi, a version of himself that was his ideal. Basically imagine seeing the best version of yourself. Literally the you if you didn't make mistakes. If you got straight A's, worked out daily, was a prodigy. Imagine the best person you could be, that was Song Yi. And he was able to interact with him. Due to this, his depression only furthered. Think about it like this. He was at the lowest point in his life, shackled down by his regret for not doing anything to stop the League from falling apart. He basically had his life crumble and was blaming himself for all of it. Then he looked into the mirror and saw a different version of him living their best life, represented by having wings on their back, showing freedom. So he became depressed because he viewed Song Yi as evidence that he truly failed in life. To put it into normie terms, grass toucher terms, real life terms, it's as if you failed at a big moment in life, which many of y'all can probably say you have. And after failing, you kept that regret saying, oh, if I just studied more, I would have been accepted into that college. If I just did better on that date, I would be going out with that person. Or maybe thinking that if you were able to get that dream job, you would be so much happier than you are now. Imagine any time in your life you were filled with regret over your past. Then think, what if you saw a different version of yourself that didn't make those same mistakes? And you were just elated in that timeline, really living your dream. Most people would look at that as proof that they failed in life. Because you don't have your wings, because you took a wrong path, that means you can never achieve what the ideal version of yourself has. And that is precisely what Yi-Song did. He hated himself, viewing his life as worthless because he wasn't able to be the same person in that other world. And now I'll be venturing into spoiler territory, so skip to this time on screen if you do not want to be spoiled for Kanto 4. But as the story progresses, Yi-Song looks through his life and his conversations with Song Yi, and very slowly comes to the realization that even if he doesn't have his wings, even though he's failed in life, seeing a version of himself with the wings doesn't mean that he can no longer get them, that his past failures have ruined his life. He comes to understand that because a version of him has the wings, that means he is able to get them. He may not be the person in the mirror, but they are a reflection of himself, so those wings, despite him not having them, just seeing them means he has the ability to gain them. It's like when someone gets obsessed with only looking at their failures and says there's no way for them to get better. Yet they're blind to all the potential they have as a person, everything they can do to get better. That mindset of, I've already failed, so what, creates a vicious cycle for someone to live in. And Kanto 4 shows just what it's like. Yi-Song was unable to live due to regret, and because of that mindset, he only made his life worse, until realizing that it's not too late to become the ideal version he sees of himself. In between all the insane shit, the domain expansion due to ego, having an insane lady in the consciousness of humanity speak to somebody about a cow, or even the torturing of an eyeball that came from a star's wish that then produces tears for those to be refined into an ampule that regenerates damage to one's body to then be sold as a way to keep K-Corp's tier business up booming. Yo, look, I gave the heads up that the lore gets kinda nutty, alright? The story has all of this wonder to it, an honestly beautiful world, but at its core, it's about improving yourself as a person. Same goes with Kanto 5. In it, Ishmael laments the common cycle of life, where you go study, get good grades, get into a college, graduate, get a good job, retire. Due to her not wanting to live that way, she quits, and goes to search for any random job, deciding to become a sailor after seeing the posting for it. That's because she didn't know what she wanted out of life. She had no goals to really aim for. It didn't feel like she was really living through life, but instead just drifting through life. Then, after joining the Pequod ship, she meets Keequeg. And with time, she grows to love her, even thinking about how she would love to spend her time walking on the coastline with her. In her life, she had finally found something, or I suppose someone, to live for, Keequeg. That is, until Ahab led them to fight against the Pallid Whale.
아무도 없어요.
In just one bite, it had taken away everything from Ishmael, supposedly killing Keequeg. Then Ishmael was consumed with her hatred against Ahab, wanting nothing more than to take her life, due to the fact that Ahab led Keequeg against the Pallid Whale. That hatred then bred the pure obsession to get revenge against Ahab. That becomes her only goal in life. She disregards making friends, doesn't care about anything that will happen in her future. Anything she did in life was just to get revenge against Ahab, nothing else mattered. And we saw all of that from her character ever since the casino scene. But now I'll be going into spoilers, so please skip to this timestamp if you do not wish to be spoiled. But the only time she let up in the goal of killing Ahab was once she found out that Keequeg is still alive inside of the Pallid Whale. But the hatred still holds her. So she makes a deal that after killing the whale, Ahab will give up her life to Ishmael, which is what she's wanted for years, to kill the person who caused everything to go wrong. Due to this obsession, she loses sight of who she is as a person, until Heathcliff and Dante lend her a helping hand and say how this isn't the right path. She disregards those words and is going to be rid of Ahab, until hearing this.
그것만 죽인다면 더 이상 바랄 것이 없을 거라고.
Then she realizes what her obsession really means. All of it was just to rid herself of the guilt. After all, if she had stood up to Ahab before being forced to fight the Pallid Whale, then she and Keequeg wouldn't have been separated. But because that guilt is hard to face, she covers it by saying that Ahab is the root of all evil, and if she can just kill her, then it would absolve herself of everything. Though all the obsession really meant was that she was turning into Ahab, mirroring how she was with the Pallid Whale. Due to this realization, she decides to not kill Ahab. If she did, she would have become her, and have not been someone who was able to take the helm of her own life. So she spares her, in the process taking the first step as her own person, not being told or commanded and instead following her own compass, saying that her actions in the past cannot simply be wiped away or justified. After all, she's responsible for them. Though instead of being consumed by her hate, only being left hollow because of it, she is instead going to take a different road, in which she bears the responsibility of what she did in life and takes that guilt to become someone who will make their own choice. The message is that, in life, you're gonna make mistakes. You won't have everything figured out, and due to those mistakes, you'll have a lot of bridges burned. But as a person, you need to recognize what you did wrong, and instead of placing the fault of it all on someone else, instead look at yourself and improve. Before your obsession turns you into someone you're not, it's important to make sure that you are in control of your life. Before anything, that is what you need to be sure of. Others will help you, but they should never control you. And this relates a lot to real life with people who spend their entire days online, listening to other people's definitions of success, where it's common to hear that you need to be making this much, have these degrees, this job, and if you don't, you failed in life. While the reality is, nobody fucking knows what they're doing. No one has every little thing figured out, and you don't need to know what you want out of life immediately. That will take time. But what's important is that you take control of yourself. Canto 5, as well as Canto 4, and hell, probably all the others in the future, are stories about healing. That is why I love them and the characters in Limbus Company. Of course, the writing itself is good. As I said, the cast feels like actual characters instead of moving plot points. But the main thing I love is how the story, whilst being put to a grand scale in what it does, has messages and meanings that cover topics most people go through in the real world. I haven't seen many games able to do that in a good way. And to me, that brings it the extra mile for it to have one of the best casts I've seen out of a game. That is what makes it special in the eyes of anyone who's played it. A bit ago on Twitter, I made a post asking people what they thought the most beautiful line in Limbus Company was. And the replies were filled with people saying how the scene that they love had them so emotionally invested, or how they were able to heavily relate to a specific character. Seeing the growth the cast goes through is the main strength of Limbus Company, and how a lot of people can, unfortunately, relate. In terms of Project Moon's works, it's not just Limbus that's like that either. Even looking back to Labyrinth Runner, or the worst gaming experience you could ever have, Lobotomy Corporation, the stories have been about growth. There is an overarching plot in all of them, but their works have been incredibly character-based. Like Ayn addressing all the hurt he's caused in others, or Angela living through the pain of her past trauma. That has always been Project Moon's focus. So yes, Limbus Company has one of the best casts I've seen out of a video game, as I haven't seen many characters be this relatable or have me as emotionally invested in their stories. And I wouldn't even say that this video was able to fully cover the depths of the writing. To do that, I would have needed a 3-hour-long video. I could have covered how Yi Sang's companion's view of the mirror relates to their character, how Heathcliff's character was all developed for one goal, or gone over the 1,000-page doc that shows the story references to the layers in Dante's Inferno. And hell, even the story relations to the original book material. But I wanted to keep the length semi-small for the video and talk about the main reason we love the story in this game that's about a handful of idiots on a sentient bus. Do I think the story is perfect? No. Do I think its writing is leagues above other really well-written games? No. Do I think the cast is the absolute best we'll see out of any game whatsoever? Of course not. But personally, this cast and story has had me invested like no other game has been able to. That is why I love it.
이상이라 하오. 구태여 뽑아보자면 최근에 가장 기뻤던 일은 낭술회를 했을 때 가장 절망스러웠던 순간은 그곳에서 끊어졌다 믿어 의심치 않았던 목숨이 재생되던 순간. 그럼 이제 땅을 박차고 날개짓 해봐. 그저 한 번 더 날고 싶었어. 자유롭게.
저를 이스마일이라고 불러주세요. 아무도 없어요. 아무나! 저를 이스마일이라고 불러주세요. 나를 이스마일이라고. 목적도 없이 떠돌기만 했다는 걸. 그러다 소중한 사람들을 전부 잃었다는 걸. 나 혼자 살아남았다는 걸. 겨우 되찾은 이들까지 내 손으로 죽이고 말았다는 걸. 모든 걸 당신의 탓으로 돌려야지만 견딜 수 있었으니까. 그리고 나는 이 배의 1등 항해사로서 당신이 알려주는 방향을 믿으면서 갈 거예요. 그러니까 지금은 당신이 내 선장이라는 뜻이죠.
히스클리프, 멋대로 부수고 깨부수는 일은 전문으로 하고 다녔지.
내가 캐시를 죽인 거야. 그렇지. 그러니까 캐시, 유령이 돼서 나를 찾아와. 네가 없는 시면에 나를 내버려 두지 말고. 난 혼자서는 도저히 살 수 없어.
이게 사람이 할 행동인가? 캐서린, 너의 모든 말들은 나를 사랑한다는 말이었네. 저 꽃의 이름은 히스라고 해. 황야에서 고독하게 피어나지만 폭풍에도 끈질기게 살아남아서 기다리지. 몰라, 그냥 시간을.